Good evening and welcome to the Channel Studios here in London with your international news around the world in 5. Shocking images of civilian bodies in the streets of Bucha near Kiev have led to an outpouring of international condemnation of Russia. Bodies litter the streets here. Much of the footage is too distressing to show. Ukrainian authorities say 410 civilians have been killed in areas around Kiev so far, although this hasn't been independently verified. This woman was looking for her husband for 13 days before finding him shot dead in the basement of a building. Shallow graves have also been found containing bodies of families. The horrific scenes have been found after Russian forces pulled out of towns and cities surrounding Kyiv. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has visited Bucha, inspecting a road where a Russian column was ambushed. French President Emmanuel Macron said that a new round of sanctions targeting Russia was needed, while the Polish Prime Minister has described it as genocide. The EU foreign policy spokesman said Russia must be held accountable.
The European Union condemns in the strongest possible terms the reported atrocities committed by Russian occupation forces in a number of Ukrainian towns and cities such as Bucha and others. Yet again, the Kremlin is showing its true face, targeting, murdering civilians, destroying civilian infrastructure, violating international humanitarian law and committing war crimes.
In response, Russia's Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov says Ukraine's version of what happened in the town of Bucha was a fake attack aimed at undermining Moscow. Lavrov said the dead bodies were staged and that images of them and what he said was Ukraine's false version of events had been spread on social media by Western countries and Ukraine. Hong Kong's leader, Carrie Lam, has announced she would not seek a second term in office after a controversial tenure that has seen many of the territory's civil freedoms eroded. As chief executive, Ms. Lam oversaw a turbulent period where massive pro-democracy protests led to greater Chinese control in Hong Kong. The 64-year-old was Beijing's hand-picked choice, entering office in 2017. She also revealed she had informed China about her desire not to seek a second term a year ago, despite refusing in recent times to answer questions about her political future. Ms. Lam said she was stepping back and prioritising her family. Pakistan's Supreme Court is expected to decide the fate of embattled Prime Minister Imran Khan following a day of political turmoil.
National Assembly के हमारे speaker ने
Mr. Khan has faced an attempt to oust him from office in recent days, but in a move that has rocked the country, members of Mr. Khan's party on Sunday blocked a vote of no confidence in the Prime Minister and dissolved Parliament. Mr. Khan has claimed that the vote was part of a US conspiracy to remove him. Furious opposition politicians have now filed a petition to the Supreme Court to rule on whether the move to block the vote was constitutional. Hungary's nationalist Prime Minister Viktor Orban has won a fourth term by a landslide in the country's general election. His right-wing Fidesz party had 53.1% of votes, with 98% of the votes counted. The opposition alliance, led by Peter Marchese, was far behind with 35%. In his victory speech, Mr. Orban criticised Brussels bureaucrats and Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky, calling them opponents. More than 38,000 medical personnel from across the armed forces and the healthcare profession have arrived in Shanghai to test its 26 million residents for COVID-19. Authorities in Shanghai are struggling to deal with a suspected wave of COVID infections at a large hospital for the elderly, in a sign of how serious the outbreak is in China's biggest city. Shanghai has not declared any new COVID deaths in the city since the outbreak or the latest wave of the virus, but the movement of healthcare workers to the city is one of the country's biggest ever public health responses. And Elon Musk has taken a 9.2% stake in Twitter, sending shares rocketing about 25%. The Tesla founder bought around 73,500 Twitter shares on the 14th of March, that's according to the Securities and Exchange Commission. The stake is worth $2.89 billion based on Twitter's closing price on Friday, and it makes him one of the largest shareholders in the company and is more than 4 times the 2.25% holding of Twitter founder Jack Dorsey. Musk is a regular Twitter user with more than 80 million followers, although recently he said he was giving serious thought to building a new social media platform of his own. And that's your international news around the world in 5. Now back to the Channel Studios in Lagos.